Hey, welcome back to another episode. In this episode, we have Mike Sheppard. Mike Sheppard is a retired firefighter of 36 years, served 6 years in the United States Air Force, and has a wealth of knowledge and experience that I thought would be beneficial to this podcast and conversation. Met Mike up in Oregon while mountain biking when I was going to UBI for bike mechanic school. Good dude, very hospitable. So without further ado, Mike Sheppard.
That sound always kind of trips me out because it's so like the 80s sci-fi movies, where you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
that computer just talking all like kind of all wonky. And then when I hear it, it's just like, guess we're here. We're here in the future. I guess now is always the future. So, hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Crashing Convos. This week we got Mike Sheppard. I pronounced your name right? It's not Sheppard.
Yeah, shepherd, like shepherd dog, shepherd, sheep herder.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah, so I met Mike in Oregon when I was up there going to UBI, and I made the one thing that I asked people not to do: freaking phones dinging.
Yeah.
And it's actually for this meeting, or this podcast. Anyways, yeah, so I met him up in Oregon when I was up there going to UBI, and Mike and your girlfriend, wife. I'm sorry.
Yep.
She can punch me.
Right.
She can punch me next time.
She's my girlfriend, my friend, my wife. She's all
There you
of it.
go. So yeah, they were nice enough to show me up this path where we were at Mountain of the Rogue. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That place was fun. I know that probably
It
wasn't.
is.
I know that probably wasn't your best trails there, but I really appreciate it, and we've had some sidebar conversations since then, and yeah, we talked about it, and here we are. So yeah, Mike. So how's the mountain biking up there?
Mountain biking is great. I'm pretty simple. I don't need to go a different place every weekend. I just stick to what works for me, and I discovered flow trails for the first time in 2019, and I rarely ride cross country anymore. I love flow trails, and we have
Nice.
some really good ones here local to me, and so I'm like old news, man. I hit those all the time. My friends will be like, hey, you want to go ride alpine? And nope, I'm hitting Allsea today. I mean, it's got a hard pedal up, and then a nice long flowy downhill with tabletops and gap jumps and big berms, and I love it.
Yeah, I need to get back out there. I mean, I only got to see Mount Ashland, and which is a brutal climb up.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for me from Texas, that was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But well worth it. And then
Oh,
Mountain
yeah.
Rogue. So
Yeah, we like both of those, and they've done a bunch of work since last time. Last time I was there was the last time you were there, and they've done a bunch of work since then. So I need to get up there too. I'm always watching the videos and stuff from guys that are riding it all the time. Thomas Whiteacre and some of those guys. Yeah.
what do you follow those guys at? Like, is it like on YouTube or something? Or
They both have YouTube channels, and they also post on Facebook and Instagram regularly. And I watch them on all three of those.
And
It's
what's
just kind of what I stumble across.
what are their names?
Thomas Whiteacre, Whiteaker, and Tom Winkler.
Oh, okay. I know. I met Tom up there.
Yeah, he used to do with the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a pretty
Yeah,
cool
they're
dude
both
too.
good guys, and they both have. Tom Winkler's is called Timber Rides. Is his, I think on YouTube it's Timber Rides, and Whitaker has one that's similar to Timber Rides, but I can't think of the name of it right now.
Yeah. You still riding the pivot switchblade?
Yeah, I bought that bike for my retirement in 2021, and I love that bike. That's the nicest bike I've ever had. It's more bike than I could use or need, and I could afford it, so I bought it.
Nice.
They have the thing that a lot of the young guys say 007, zero tricks, zero style, and $7,000 bike. Well, that's me.
Nice.
And if you don't like it, too bad.
Yeah. Hey, you ride what you got, man. You ride
Right.
what you got. Yeah, I mean, I still have the Firebird, and I'm still settling into that. I don't think I've done some crazy stuff, but I don't think I've done anything that I still don't think I've pushed its potential of what
Right.
it's possible, like what's possible with that bike. So it's
Yeah.
a good thing, I think.
Well, and then I'm going to win that bike that you guys are raffling off. So once I win that, I'll have two switchblades.
There you
So
go, man. That'd be cool, man. That'd be cool if you won that Switchblade, man.
yeah, yeah, heck yeah, it would.
My wife and I, both bought I think we bought a few tickets. But I really don't want, even though I want to win it, I don't want to win it because it would just
Yeah,
look sketchy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But they always do like a random thing, like the random generated thing. So,
yeah.
they ended up raffling off all the tickets, I think it was like 300 of them.
So wow, that's cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
bought two. So
Um,
it's a
so there,
good cause. We have two big trail groups up here, and I belong to one of them, Disciples of Dirt,
mhm.
and they do a big fundraiser every January 15th. And this year they had a huge one, and there's probably 400 people there. And it was raining so much I didn't even bring my bike. People were just covered in mud, but man, they sold a lot of raffle tickets, and they raffled off a transition frame and all kinds of nice swag and parts, and they made a lot of money. So I'm all for fundraisers and raffles.
That's cool, man. That's cool when people are like doing things to put it back in the community in one way or
Yeah,
another, or help
yeah,
somebody.
absolutely.
You got Lotus right here trying to get in the podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I saw you had your pup out there. So you take your pup out like to go trail riding with you?
Oh yeah, always, every time. I never go without them.
Yeah, I wish I could take her, but she's more of a like a hunting dog.
Uh-huh.
So she'll pick up scents and then want to like chase deer. But
Yeah,
like,
you can fix that, but it takes time and money. I mean, I spend a lot of money and a lot of time training Jax to be a good trail dog that's super reliable. I mean, there could be a deer right there and he'll go for it, and I'll just tell him to leave it and he'll just
mhm.
come right back to me, you know.
Yeah, I mean she's pretty good. She listens, but I think she's a sandbagger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's she I don't know. She's not in the mood. She won't want to go, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I need to give her another opportunity because I think she gets really bothered when I go to the trails and I come back and she's giving me attitude. So maybe
Oh
I should give
yeah.
her another go. Maybe she's ready now.
Yeah, yeah. I had my dog trained by a guy here locally called Dopamine Canine, and he's always on YouTube and on Facebook. But man, he's a dog master, and he really helped me with Jax. So yeah,
Nice.
I trust Jax. He does everything I say when I say it, and he's super dog neutral. So that's another thing. The dog can be trained to be dog neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice. So you said you retired. That was from
yeah,
the fire department?
yeah.
Nice. And how long were you in the fire department?
36 years. Yeah. Yeah. You don't see any 60-year-old firefighters for a reason. It's just not a thing. A lot of people think, oh, that's an early retirement, but for the fire service, it's not. I mean, physically and mentally, it's just not. Most people retire around 55, 56. I went a little bit longer because I got divorced late in life. And so I
Mm.
had to rebuild up my retirement again. And yeah, so uh, yeah, 36 years. Yep.
Man. So in 36 years, was that all in Oregon or
No, no, no. Half of it was in Los Angeles, and then my first 5 years, 10 months was in the Air Force.
nice? Well,
Yeah,
appreciate
if
your
that
service,
counts.
man.
Huh?
Appreciate your
Yeah.
service in both services.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely was my life's pleasure.
Um, so I got a buddy, one of my best friends, he's a firefighter, and we
Hmm.
got into this conversation recently how there are certain people within the fire department that stick around
Hmm.
just because I mean whether or not like the for whatever reason they stick around and some of them can still do the job and some of them can't and you just
Hmm.
kind of hinted at it like it's like some aren't like the physical demands of that of the job, not only that like the stressors of like dealing with the public all the time, like
Yeah.
How is it different from Los Angeles to Oregon as far as the community goes?
Um, well, the calls are pretty much the same. I mean, we have calls here that I never had in LA, obviously. Um, we have calls that are uh, weather related. We have really rural calls. Like we could drive 50 miles for a call. That's just not heard of in LA. Um, and we could drive 50 miles in snow. So so the difference in calls here is mostly weather and distance, and then resources. Oregon, doesn't have as much. Eugene, Oregon, Springfield, Oregon doesn't have as many resources as Los Angeles County, and so sometimes one of the sayings here, which I like and don't necessarily like, is doing more with less.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times you're just making things work.
Right.
Uh, 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 but the people are pretty much the same. We have the same thing with, we don't have as much violence here. Like in LA, shootings were almost every shift you could go on a shooting or a stabbing or something like that, or traumatic car accidents. So you have those calls a little bit less frequently here, but like you still going on, the homeless and overdoses and medical emergencies. I mean, it's kind of all the same. And then the fire culture is different, a little bit different here. The culture down there is a little more established. It's a little more, I think the union's stronger because it's bigger. Down there, you can choose which station you want to work at. And if there's an opening and you have the seniority, then you could work at that station. Here, they put you where they want you, and they move you around quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Down there, it was kind of like an honor to work at busy stations. And busy stations were hard to get into. Here, nobody wants to be in busy stations. So, like, I worked in busy stations from the day I started in the fire service, with the exception of the military, to the day I finished. I mean, like, I guess the way I would put it is if you're a special forces guy, you want to do your job, you want to go fight. So to me, being a highly trained firefighter paramedic, I want to go do my job. I want to run some calls,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit different culture in that, a lot of people left. There's a big turnover in the department I retired from here in Oregon. Whereas in Los Angeles, hardly anybody leaves there. It was like a big deal when I left there. Like nobody could believe I was leaving, to go to Oregon. But yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of similarities and there's some differences. The money in LA is a lot bigger, but you're working a lot more too. So yeah. Anyhow, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking about it, like the distance having to drive and like to a call there as opposed to LA. But it probably took you like 50, like seemingly like 50 miles just to get to your call in LA. Traffic.
Yeah, LA, we use helicopters a lot there, and the department I worked for had, I think now they have 7 or 8 helicopters, but they had 5 when I was there. And we use helicopters a lot because if you have a traumatic injury, whether it be from violence or an accident, and you got to get them to a trauma center, you're sitting in gridlock traffic. I mean, you could blow your siren all you want, but if everybody's bumper to bumper, nobody can move. You're not getting anywhere. We would call a helicopter and then have the patient go to the hospital in the helicopter.
Wow. Yeah, that's something. I mean, it makes sense. I imagine the same thing here in San Antonio, but the traffic is nowhere as bad in here as in LA. Boston was the same way.
I mean, the 5 freeway in Los Angeles is 6 or 8 lanes each direction. Here in Oregon, it's 2 lanes, in each direction.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Do you think I've always wondered that, like if in cities it's more violent just because people are just so more frantic, like in the way they drive, the way they interact with each other. Like there's so many people and it's just like a friction.
Yeah. And I think there's something to that. And I mean, even like, okay, well, the population in Oregon is under 5 million for the whole state. Los Angeles County is 9 million.
Oh, God.
It's just one county, you know? So, so yeah, there's something to that. And there's a saying, and I don't want to mess it up, but Thomas Jefferson said something about men were not meant to live on top of another like the animals do. And I think there's something to that, I really do. I mean, that tension kind of seeps out into everything, but also every man has the ability to control that too, to control that anger and the road rage, and that not take everything personal. And in Los Angeles in traffic, everybody takes everything personal. My wife is from Eugene, Oregon, my current wife, and she's born and raised here, and we love to go to Palm Springs in the wintertime here, escape the cold and go to Palm Springs for a week. And we fly into John Wayne Airport and usually rent a car and then drive to Palm Springs. And she saw some road rage there on the freeway and really bad traffic, and she was blown away. She'd never seen anything like that, and she's been here 50 years and it's just not common here, and I think maybe because people are more spread out, but yeah, people take everything so personally, and you gotta just understand it's not personal.
I wonder if that's because like it's kind of like I don't want to say a state, because more locally, like the bigger cities like San Francisco, LA, I don't know about San Diego. I've been to San Diego and LA, well, passing through LA, but I wonder if that has to do with like, it's a kind of like a city that caters to convenience. And if it doesn't happen like right away, like if they don't get there right away, or if they're not, whether they realize it or not, they don't have that instant gratification of getting there, or if they're treated the way that they feel they should be treated. And I'm not saying being disrespected, but if there's anything slight, that's like a perfect recipe just to like blow up because they don't have control of their emotions.
Yeah. I think Americans in general feel kind of entitled, and I think in crowded cities, I think even more so. And I saw a cartoon once where somebody's standing in front of the microwave screaming, "Hurry up." And I mean, I think that's a good example, and I mean, I'm guilty of all these things. I'm guilty of road rage, of losing my shit,
Yeah, me too.
I've lost it on fire department calls before, like, lost my temper at a patient, the thing is you've got to have awareness and know that it's not the right thing to do. I know, like, it's kind of braggadocious. Some people are proud of their temper and like, oh, nobody F's with me, and the whole "don't tread on me" flag, it's just like, just get over yourself. You're not, I think you're right. I think there's a little bit of entitlement, and people are used to instant gratification, and, I think not receiving that, and, but I mean, there's ways to get in touch with all that and change it, because you definitely don't have to be that way.
Right. And yeah, and there's like I usually say, there's a balance to all that, right? I mean, I used to be on that side of it too, where the neighborhood I grew up in, it was all about respect. And if I got looked at the wrong way, I felt like I had to defend myself, or like, I don't know, it would just like just eat away at me until I said or did something to whatever's. But through growth, and then like in the military and being around so many different people in different countries, and actually kind of getting a perspective on things. And even then I still like work at it, because I fall into my old habits sometimes. And but you're right. Like, it is, I am guilty of it as well, but once you're aware of it, I feel like you have the responsibility to change it.
Yeah, it's funny, like, you were asking about the fire department and culture here. So one of the differences here is there's guys like me, and there's a couple other guys from big cities, but the fire department here is not not very diverse. It's mostly white dudes,
Mm-hmm.
from here.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a lot of times they don't understand why somebody like me, or not necessarily me, but I have another friend who's from a big city, and why he gets defensive or whatever, but they don't have empathy for where he came from. And like you said, everything is a slight, and every body motion, saying something to somebody, like where we come from, where I come from, where he comes from, you don't do that.
Right.
That means something. So on one hand, guys like him and me have to learn not to take everything personal. And on the other hand, people that didn't grow up in an area where respect and where slights mean something, they got to have a little. So we got to kind of both compromise and come together. But yeah, like you said, you come from somewhere or from a family. My dad and my uncles, they were all about, they weren't highly educated, and they were all about, if somebody steps on your shoe, you punch them.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? The guy just stepped on my shoe. If it was an accident,
Right.
about respect, and so anyhow, yeah.
Yeah. I yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about that, and I was like thinking about, like, I remember I used to, I mean, I say these things, but I say them with the understanding, like, that's just the way things were.
Yeah.
But I remember I almost I actually I met my best friend. Like, it was my first day of school, and middle school, I think it was 7th grade. And I had my new school clothes on, right? And the way I was brought up, if you got your school clothes dirty, you can get your ass kicked. And so we're playing football, right? And I don't know if I tackled him, or I don't know. You asked him, he says one story. You asked me, I say another story. But either way, like, we both went to the ground and we almost fought, right? And they pulled us apart. But it was that idea, right? Like, my clothes are dirty, or whatever. And like, I felt disrespected. But it's funny how, like, boys or guys in general, like, will do that and then, like, hit it off. Like, we had a class later and we ended up eventually talking. And then the other side, maybe because I won't ever fully understand, because I'm not a female, but that's not done, where they have slights at each other and they just keep it up until, I'm not saying all females, but some females.
Right. Yeah, I think after something like that with two males, I think there's you kind of get to a mutual understanding, like it doesn't even have to be spoken, and then you bond, like that. I think I think there's definitely something to that, especially when you're younger, and that happens a lot in the military too, come to a mutual respect and a mutual understanding, and then all of a sudden you're tight.
Yeah. And you're forced. I don't want to say you're forced, but because you have something bigger, right? You have the mission, whatever that mission is, whether it's in basic to get along to, I don't know, get out of basic training or get to your class or deployments, whatever. But so there was always that bigger thing that you had to focus on together. I remember those people that I got in arguments with, and looking back on it, I felt like I kept my cool for long enough, but then I hit it was a flashpoint halfway through the deployment. I lost my cool. But either way, at the end of the day, it was like, all right, you don't have to like me, I don't have to like you, but we still got to get this done. When we talk to each other, we'll address whatever, and we won't have to fucking hang out and drink beers or what, not drink beers, but whatever. Like, and we just kind of went our ways. And whenever things did come up, we just handled it and then pressed on. I wish there was a lot more people doing that nowadays.
Oh yeah. It's a trip. I'm reading a book right now called the 10 Obligations of Good Citizenship, and it talks about a lot in there about how things are more divisive now, and people aren't necessarily agreeing to disagree. It's either you isolate yourself to people that think just like you, and you stick to that, or you just isolate yourself, period, and you're afraid to express your opinions or whatever. And he talks about the importance of, being able to listen to somebody, but not listening to them in order for you to have the next turn to speak and try to convince them, but listen to them to just try to see how they feel, whether it be about politics, which mostly is what it's about nowadays, or, your social beliefs and cultural beliefs, and how. But nowadays, the way the world is in the last probably 8 or 10 years, people are less willing to agree to disagree. I'm proud to say that I have several friends from the fire department and the military that I still communicate with, and we're 180 degrees on our basic beliefs about politics in the world, but our commonalities are strong enough that we can see past that or through that and just agree to disagree.
Yeah. And at one point in time, that's what people used to do, I guess, like in barbershops and like in bars and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And if they went to fighting, they fought, and then they just kind of went their ways, but they still, they still existed with each other. And I wonder if technology and the idea, like social media, has created an outlet, but not a healthy outlet for people, because they can stay stuck in their, and isolated, and they can choose to, I guess you could choose who to hang around with to have the similar mindset of thinking, that group think that they look for, because they're not being challenged. But yeah, I wonder if that's just kind of put like gasoline on the fire, if you will.
Right.
I don't think this is the first time in history that this has ever been like this.
Right. And that's another thing that the author of that book points out, is that this is the first time in history, and with the pandemic and with politics, was gasoline on the fire. And we are social media. You do your thing on social media, I do mine, but there's not, there are people that have an agenda, and they track your trends and everything. And oh, okay. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, I got you now. You said track your trends, and
I'm out in the country, so I have the speaking of trends, I have Starlink, so we have the Starlink, and it's not as starry as you think it should be. So,
all right.
Yeah, but it's our best way to get Wi-Fi. So yeah, so there are things behind the scene influencing social media, but it's funny because like we'll curse, oh, social media is this and that, but we're all on social media, and we do our own thing on social media, and we create our own community on social media, but outside of that, so, my social media is mostly people that I interact with that either are family from and friends from LA that I can, see every day on social media. There are people that from the fire department community, or they're mountain bikers. And then there's some overlaps in between all that, but, I think my Instagram and Facebook, I block out people that I think are really negative or really divisive. I don't even want to hear that shit. I don't want to see it. If I go mountain biking with you, I'm not going mountain biking with you to hear you rant about your political beliefs. I want to go have fun and be outdoors and be in touch with, nature. And I want to feel a little bit of danger and a little bit of risk, and feel alive. I don't, so on social media, I block out the people that take that away from me. And sometimes maybe that's not good, but but that's just the way it is. I think we are social media, we are so
like social media, like there's a few things I can take out of that, but like, so social media, right, we can choose who we engage with, and I'm all about, like, I won't argue with somebody that is just trying to win an argument.
Right.
If they're not trying to come to a common understanding, I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but just come to a
Right.
common understanding and just see where I'm coming from and vice versa. And then we could press on, right? But if you're
Hmm.
just like trying to over talk me and
Right.
like just want to fight,
Hmm.
and I'm not in that place right now. I mean,
Right.
if I don't, so yes, I'm all about that. If there's somebody that's so toxic, then I will delete them or move them away. Or if they have uh nefarious agendas, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on top of that, yeah, and I used to talk a lot of shit about social media because
Hmm.
only chose to see it from the negative side of it,
Yeah.
because just cybersecurity and all the ways that you can be infiltrated through that, things
Yeah.
that learn in the military and
Yeah.
just, people's, that's not social media, but just technology in general. I know I could be manipulated.
Yeah.
But fast forward, understanding how it could be used as a tool for good, right? It's like any tool, right? You could use a hammer to kill somebody. You could use a hammer to build something beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, Granted, you probably need a little bit more tools, just a hammer, but same point either way. So with that, it's like, all right, so if I'm going to be on here, how can I use this positively and learn something, So that's by, putting the filters, if you will, on social media. It's like, so following like daily philosophy is one of the things I follow. Jordan Peterson is one of the people I follow, even his daughter, Michaela Peterson. And those are thought provoking. I learned stuff about, like, I had somebody on from San Francisco, Adaptable Polarity, and he's architect. He's an architect, but he got into um, curious. I think he went to something with his girlfriend at the time or wife, and it was like a masseuse course. But when he took it, the class, and passed it, it just intrigued him just to understand what the body is architecturally and understanding that from that aspect. So he continues to go down and strip the body down and posts like all kinds of like cool like pictures to better understand our physiology. So stuff
Hmm.
like that. Yeah. So my point is, or you could go on the other side, right? Or you're just
Yeah.
watching like cat videos and people fighting and
Yeah. There's some good cat
arsonists.
videos.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just
No,
saying, you
yep.
are what you become what you watch. You become what you consume.
Yeah, yeah. So, like one of the things I work closely with law enforcement my whole life as a firefighter, paramedic. Cops call us every shift. You go to help cops either treat somebody who got injured, or to treat somebody who they injured, or to sedate somebody who's really violent. And so, anyhow, I follow local police department here because I spent the last 15 years working with these guys, and I support their, they have a good healthy social media page, and they post stuff about crime or whatever. And there was recently a shootout they had with some people that they were doing a high speed chase with, and that doesn't happen hardly ever here. And so just reading some of the comments, and this one dude's like, oh, Oregon's the biggest shithole. It's just become a huge ghetto. And obviously I'm thinking this guy's never lived in a ghetto, but like everything he sees everything in such a negative, dark way. And you can see it that way. Yeah, sure. But like, to call the state of Oregon a shithole because a crime happened. I mean, humans are humans all over the United States, and crime's happening in everywhere there's any population, and so this guy's just seeing the total negative, and then he starts going off about social media. But here he is on social media going off about social media. It's just and seeing everything in a negative light. And I've kind of felt bad for the guy. I'm like, wow, what a life, to wake up with that mental attitude and go to bed with that mental attitude. And
Mm-hmm.
that's there's so much more to it than that. Like you said, there's some really good outlets out there, and I'm the same way. I have several people that I follow that are like super intelligent people, more intelligent than me, that think of things that I would have never thought of. And then it kind of opens my mind up to thinking healthier things. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what led me to Stoicism, and following Stoicism and reading about Stoicism. And yeah, there's a lot of healthy stuff that can be had. It's just all, like you said, like a tool, and how you choose to use that tool.
Mm-hmm.
So And as adults, we're responsible how we use tools. So
That's right. And yeah, and one of the things that kind of so go back real quick. People could, at the end of the day, people could choose whatever they want to watch. But I think at the very basis, it's like having the awareness, like, hey, is this affecting me? Like, how is this affecting me? You know, because your
Right.
body doesn't know any different. If it sees something stressful happening, it's gonna your physiology will react in kind to whatever you're
Absolutely.
watching.
Yep.
So you're like, man, why am I always so stressed out? Well, consider if you so going back to stoicism, right? Trying to focus on what you can control. So if you can control that information, if you're aware
Yep.
of it first, and then you
Yep.
can change it, start to change that narrative of what you're feeding yourself,
Yep.
then you have some control over your stress. Not
Right.
everything, but you know, you're not contributing to it.
No, but
So
you do have control over it. Absolutely. And going as far as you're going to understand the physiology of why you feel that way, you know, and the psychology of what your mind is feeding on. I mean, you can totally control, you know, that one of the things I like about the Stoics is there's no, you know, um, as opposed to religion, there's no supernatural aspect. It's all understanding that the world is change and life is perspective, and you have absolutely control over how you think of things and how you respond to things, you know, and and if you understand the physiology of it, it's just that much more. You can tell yourself, hey, I'm experiencing this because it's dopamine or whatever, you know. But anyhow, you know, yeah, social media. It's funny because I have friends from California that, you know, that say they don't oh, I don't go on social media, but I know they're trolling, they're on social media, they just never comment. And then you see a comment from them, or they like something, you're like, aha, you are there, you know. Yeah, you are there. So,
yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with it. It just, like you said, it, if things are eating you up, then maybe you should, you know, either uh, change what you're spending your time looking at. I I'm proud to say that I can mindlessly scroll through on Instagram all these mountain bike feeds and just watch what people are doing on mountain bikes, and you know, and not only what they're doing on mountain bikes, but how they're filming stuff, and like, oh my God, how did that guy do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, and it's kind of mindless, but you know, that's my thing. Um, that's what chills me out. That's what, you know, is mountain biking. And so watching experts.
So I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So watching mountain biking videos, yeah,
Yeah,
but also like when you're watching them, right? If you're aware enough of your physiology, like, or just like being mindful, right?
yeah,
Um, and you're just like, like, man, so you're excited to watch it. It brings joy to you. That's different from watching something that's just like you're stressed out and like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? You know, but
yeah,
it's all about that balance. Yeah. And within that, like watching those videos and learning how to video edit. I know you talked about that earlier, and filming and stuff like that, like with the GoPro, that brings like community, right? Because you're going to reach out like, hey, you know, how
yeah,
did you do this? And
yeah,
like within that, people that are creative, they're usually like a little bit more happier because they have an outlet to put
yeah,
that um stress or whatever into their creativity.
yeah, yeah. You gotta have outlets, man. You gotta, I love uh, I love the saying, and I think it's attributed to different people, but I think it was Roosevelt who said it, that you can either wear out or rust away. And, and then a saying by, uh, a saying by, there's a similar saying by Marcus Aurelius, you know, about treating your body harshly so your mind will follow.
Mm.
And I really think there's something to that, you know, with either good rigorous exercise, and if you like, sometimes I try to work out every day, but sometimes I don't want to work out, but I always want to ride my mountain bike, you know. And so I love a good hard climb, and we have some good ones here. And then I love the reward of an adrenaline of just a nice fast descent, you
Hmm.
know, and and having that outlet, like you said, having an outlet, whether be making the videos, there's just another aspect to it that engages your mind, and I think that really keeps you healthy and more balanced. And yeah, anyhow, I'm a believer in staying engaged and having those outlets. So
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, and it's like, right, it's feeding your soul, your spirit, right? You're doing something to nourish that ethereal body, if you will,
yeah,
to, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's something and when you're connected with nature, you're starting to, maybe you think twice about, I mean, you grew up in the city, right? You
yeah,
said right. So before, you probably didn't think about like throwing trash on the street or something like that. Or maybe you grew up around it. It was just like your neighborhood was like, there's trash. Me and my wife were talking about that the other day.
yeah,
But you just know what you know, right? And
yeah,
so fast forward when you are in nature for a good amount of time, and then you're getting the joys of nature, being in the woods, either hiking or riding your bike or what have you, and like trash seems so foreign, right? And you want to pick it
yeah,
up, and you just
yeah.
you start to change the narrative and like the respect you have for something that brings you so much enjoyment. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I mean, you're more sensitive to litter than somebody who's, I mean, I'm not talking down about people from inner cities or ghettos or whatever, because, I came from that life, but that's not on your radar,
Right.
and what there is to it is there's something that, oh, somebody else will get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the trash, oh, somebody else will get that.
Right.
The shopping cart, oh, somebody else will get that. That's kind of your mindset is, and it's not a priority. There's other priorities, and that's not one of them.
Mm-hmm. Or your ego, right? Like, I'm not gonna be
Right.
seen picking up trash.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Or make that, or your concern that maybe your concern about that kind of makes you soft somehow. I
Mm-hmm.
uh Yeah, I was just having this conversation with a couple buddies on Facebook, a couple of my mountain bike buddies here, and we were talking about the shopping cart thing, about like what is people leave a shopping cart, and,
Yeah.
and I've always been somebody who pushes my shopping cart back, and one person, he's probably one of my youngest friends. He's really intelligent, but he's in his 20s, like, oh yeah, but you're taking away somebody's job. It's like, no, 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 no. You're not taking away nobody's job. You're making it so somebody can pull into a parking spot and they don't have to stop and get out and move the shopping cart and then park. You're just being more considerate of people around you, which which is one of the obligations and the 10 obligations for good citizenship. One of them is an obligation for the common good. And you're picking up trash for the common good. You're putting away the shopping cart for the common good. But when you're poor and your options are limited and you're not plugged into the bigger world, those things just aren't a priority. If you go to, I don't know if you travel much, but like when we've been to Mexico and Indonesia and different places, there is no infrastructure for trash. So you'll be on a beautiful picturesque beach and there'll be tons of trash all over the beach, and like my wife, who's born and raised here in this clean part of Oregon, she's like, wow, why is all the trash? I'm like, because they don't have a trash company. They
Yeah.
don't have Centiam disposal. They don't have a parks department who rakes the beach. So trash is just trash, and as long as it's not in front of me, then I'm not worried about it. And so in those countries, they don't have, that's not on their priorities are getting food, getting shelter. That's what their priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Like in Djibouti, Africa, it was pretty, there was a lot of trash.
yeah,
And,
it's
but
like
like in Germany, there wasn't, I mean, you'd see trash every once in a while, but it was rare.
not
It
very
really,
often. Not in
Yeah.
Germany, man. Germany's so clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially about their forests. They have a forest meister and yeah, but they take care of their stuff.
Yeah. But you have the third world countries that are beautiful, but there's no infrastructure to take care of the trash.
Mhm.
I had a house in Mexico for 18 years, and it was a
Oh,
surf spot,
badass.
and it was tiny. It was like, 400 square foot little house on the beach in like a trailer park, and I paid for somebody to come pick up my trash. Well, a trash truck didn't show up. This man and woman with their kids in a flatbed truck showed up once a week and took my trash cans, dumped them on the flatbed of the truck, and then they would sort through it and pick out stuff that was recyclable or reusable for them. And I don't even know where they took it, but it wasn't like a trash truck coming through, our trailer park. It was a mom and dad and the kids in a flatbed truck. We paid them
Right.
like $10 a month. You know, so that they just don't have the infrastructure for that. So yeah, and here we have it, and so therefore, when you see it in inner cities and everything, I call it urban blight. You know, it's not on their mind. There's an expectation that somebody else somehow will take care of it.
Right. And that's a common thing, right? Like most of the
Yeah,
time. I've even done that before. Let's say I'm rushing somewhere or something, and it's not just with trash, but this idea that somebody else will take care of it, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was in a fire truck one time, and we were at a stoplight, and there was a lady in a right turn lane at the stoplight also, and she was in a Mercedes, and this is super stereotypical, and she rolled down her window part way and took a Jack in the Box cup and just dropped it out the window, and it blew my mind. This was in LA, and so I rolled down the window of the fire truck and I'm hanging out and I'm waving my arm and she won't look at me. She's looking straight ahead, but I know she can see me. And I'm saying, "Hey, you dropped something. Hey, you dropped something." I'm waving my arm and she's not paying attention and she's just looking straight ahead, ignoring me. So I get out of the fire truck and I pick up the cup and I just put it in her windshield wiper. And she never acknowledged I did it. She just looked straight ahead and made her right turn, and I mean, I guess in my part, that's like a passive aggressive road rage, but I was just blown away that she just rolled down her window and dropped the full Jack in the Box cup, like right there in the street,
yeah,
and
I
yeah,
don't, but that's like a perfect example of what we are talking about earlier, like people that are not willing to see the reality for what it is.
right.
You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's blatant signs, but they choose to stay looking forward and not pay attention to it and just like, it's not happening. It's not happening.
Right.
Maybe it's the fear of confrontation, or maybe she thought she was going to take it. I'm not sure, but
Well, that's a good word, that fear of confrontation, because there's a lot of people, like, if they're bugged about something, they don't call their neighbor and say, "Hey, man, could you keep the noise down? Could you trim the branches of your tree? Could you stop your dog from barking?" They call 911.
hmm,
I mean, a lot of people don't talk to their neighbors. They just call 911. They can't just ignore it, so they call 911 and they expect either police or fire department. I can't even tell you how many times I've been out on a fire truck because somebody called because somebody's weeds are too high. I mean,
would you say that's like 80% of your calls is like
no.
non-emergency issues?
Oh, no, not no, no, no. 80 more than 80% of the calls are medical calls,
Got you.
and a lot of times they're emergencies. Maybe 20% of those aren't emergencies. They're definitely things that need to be taken care of, but they're not an emergency.
Mm,
But back to your statement about expectations, regarding, gratification and things not going somebody's way. Here, we're used to being able to call 911 to have somebody take care of our problem. And people know you can get medical assistance from 911, so even if it's, and there's a lot of stuff in the news about, police, and recently those two paramedics that got charged with murder for the guy who died in, I don't know, Pennsylvania or somewhere. but I mean, we're going out on 911's going out on calls in and day out, and they'll respond to anything. You know, it's like you call, we haul, or you call and we'll show up for
Right.
sure. And then sometimes it goes wrong, but you know, and that's of course what makes the news usually. And it probably should, because some of it's kind of inexcusable. But yeah, so like 80% of the calls are or more, probably 89% of the calls are medical calls, and probably 70% of those are like actual emergencies. You know,
Got you. Well, that's good. I mean, it's not good that you're going on those calls, but it's good that the majority of those calls are like urgent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of times people could solve their own problems by going to urgent care stuff, but like sometimes people in, you know, poor neighborhoods, they don't have family, they, you know, they don't have a support system, they don't have elderly people that don't have a ride to urgent care or whatever, so they need to get to the emergency room because it's got to be taken care of. You know, some cities are getting smarter, and they have these smaller units with like maybe a cop, a firefighter, paramedic, and a mental health professional, and they'll go out somewhere to see if there's another way to solve the problem without sending a fire truck and a police car.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, can we help you get some medication? Can we get you some mental health counseling? And I think that's what our country needs a lot more of, because tons of the calls that we go on are for some type of addiction and mental health issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that we don't have resources. So what do? Send a fire truck and a cop car. I mean, that's not what's needed. So, yeah. So, you know, it's changing. I wish it would have changed earlier in my career instead of at the end of it, but you know,
right. That's what I never understood. Like, I don't say I never understood, because I understand that in any organization or walk of life, like there's like, it's a microcosm, right? Each faction, each professionalism is a microcosm of society.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have your good ones and your bad ones, right? There's people I serve with in the military. I was like, I literally, like, I've told people, like, I don't know how the fuck you made it this far. You know what I mean? It's just like like just stepping on your own toes. And but teach your own, right? We train them up as best as we can. But at the same time, I didn't understand like this whole push for like defunding the police and stuff like that. I know there's bad people, and what was done was fucked up. But at the same time, I also understood, like, man, people don't even want to. I remember they used to brief to people, like, well, not brief, but like before I joined, I remember used to hearing like, never, they used to tell females, never yell rape, yell fire, because people will come running for fire, but not for rape, which is fucked up.
Right.
But
you
know what I mean? Or I've been around in bars or wherever where fights break out and people don't want to break up the fight. You know what I mean? So
no, I get it.
Just get rid of first responders didn't make no fucking sense to me.
Yeah, me personally, just my personal opinion, I just think defund the police is a misnomer. I think that what most people mean, because it's a big deal here in Oregon, and it's a big
I saw the lawns.
Yeah, I think it's a misnomer. I think it's I think what they mean is like divert funds to mental health, and we've done that here in Eugene. Like we have this organization called Cahoots. It's community access to resources, helping out on the street. Yeah,
right.
Community access to resources, helping out on the street, which is really long. But anyhow, Cahoots is amazing. These people are usually have some basic medical training, either EMT basics, paramedics, sometimes doctors or nurses, and they have mental health training. And they respond, like probably 20% of fire department and police calls, they don't need cops. And the cops and paramedics aren't trained to deal with a mental health issue. We don't know, like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I know now, but I didn't know then. And so these people, Cahoots, will come, they can take time with somebody. It's not like an emergency 911 call, and they can get them immediate mental health counseling, maybe find a bed in a place where they can detox, maybe find a place where they can feel safe for the night, or give them a ride to the hospital if they need a ride to the hospital. And I think what I personally think defund means divert more resources, and that's what. And I think things have settled down in that realm now, and I hope that the drive continues to be to get more mental health resources like Cahoots, where two people can come out and they're kind of chill and it's not escalated. There's not like some dudes and some fire turnouts, which can be kind of intimidating.
Mhm.
And then some dudes with some guns and body armor on to help somebody who's having a mental health crisis.
So how, I'm sorry, like,
Yeah,
I'm
that's right.
curious, like, how are those calls like routed? Like, so if you get it, like, let's say the dispatcher gets a call, like, is there like a line of questioning? Like, hey,
Yes.
this
Yep.
person's suicidal. All right, well, let's contact these folks. Like,
Yeah.
or,
So when the call goes into dispatch, there's police and fire dispatchers, and they're in the same building in the same room, and they're screening. There's a call screener who will shoot the call to fire or to police, and then the police dispatchers are usually the ones that handle the mental health calls. And so if the dispatcher gets a call and decides, okay, this sounds like a mental health call, this will go to police. And then the police dispatcher will go, okay, this doesn't need a police officer. This needs Cahoots or whatever
Mhm.
the acronym is for the mental health people. I mean, a lot of the cities around here have it. They just don't have enough of it. Now they have it in LA, in Los Angeles City, and in Los Angeles County. We just don't have enough of it. I think we
Got
have
you.
3 24-hour cars here for a population of about 300,000. I think we have 3 24-hour cars here. I personally think there should be like 6.
Mhm.
And I thought about doing it after I retired because I kind of have a heart for people with addiction issues and mental health issues, and so I thought about doing it, and then I just thought I gotta get some sleep, man. I can't be
Yeah.
helping people anymore. I got to get my life like back. Sleep deprivation, sleep deprivation will fuck you up, and I did it for 36 years. So, but anyhow, so I chose not to. But I think the pay starts at like $16 or $18 an hour,
Mhm.
and goes up. I mean, they don't have big budgets, so there's not a lot there, and they do get a lot of donations and stuff like that. But I think I wish the whole defund the police movement would be better defined, because I think most of the time they don't want to just abolish police departments, because that would be a fucking nightmare.
Right. I think
That
they
just
did it like was it Detroit, or no, it wasn't Detroit. They did it somewhere in the Midwest, and it wasn't good.
yeah. Yeah, no, I just think, it turns into a misnomer. It's just kind of like the people that get all worked up over the word woke, instead of, I mean, the word woke is basically, to me, I just look at what they're saying and think, okay, they're awakened. So they see something, blah, blah, blah. But to get worked up over terminology, sometimes you just got to look and see, like, what's the issue here really? What are they really saying? And,
Mhm.
just based from my reading, I try to take the calmer path, instead of getting worked
Right.
up about a word or a term,
Yeah. Yeah, and
so,
it's like a small percentage of people, right, that seemingly hijacked the word woke, right? Wokeism, and it's like this
yeah,
competition to be
yeah, I think
the
so.
most woke.
I mean, there's some validation to their whole thing, but I think it's more, I wish they would have used awakened, but it's more of a term from the streets, I'm woke, or like I'm aware, I'm awakened, and
Mm.
whatever that means. But there's definitely no reason to get freaked out about it. I mean, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a tangent we could probably go down, but I think that's still trying to settle itself out. I think over time, like the natural balance of things will like settle it out, if that makes
yeah,
sense. Because eventually the small percentage of people, the majority is gonna pretty much like not silence, that's probably bad, but like balance it out, because
yeah,
there's a lot of ideas behind some of the small percentage of people that are trying to change the dynamics of the universal reality, I guess, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yep,
Um, but No, that's good. That's good. I want to look now to see if they have something like that here in Texas, like where they have a different branch of the police and I don't want to say police department, but like a mental health services where they
Yeah.
respond to calls. Um, I I wish they would take some of that huge amount of money that the government got from big pharma. I think it was for
Yeah.
all the opioid crisis. I don't know, something like
Right.
in the millions or billions. I don't know if that went to families or, but it would have been
Yeah, I think
nice
it
if that
was.
chunk of change put in services.
I know I listened to a couple podcasts about it, and I know I read some news articles about it, and I thought it was like $3 billion, but and it was distributed out to different cities based on like the percentage of damage or problems that they had in those cities. It was something like that to me. I remember, but it's funny because a lot of it goes back to taxes, and it's funny because I have friends who are in the fire service or in the police department, but they're against more taxes, yet that's how they make their living. And and you know, I have some friends who think, they're like all suspicious of the federal government. They don't want to pay taxes, but I mean, we drive on roads, we have lit, all of our highways are lit up, we have we have all these services. Well, the money's got to come from somewhere, you
Right.
know. I mean, I gladly pay my taxes. I have a good life. I have no complaints. My property's pretty modest. A lot of it's sweat equity, but I enjoy having a decent road. I enjoy having, when we have a ice storm or snowstorm, having people come out and make the roads safe to travel on. So I try not to get too wound up about taxes, but the whole mental health thing. I mean, as a country, every city, in my personal opinion, every city, people act like homelessness is only in their city. It
Mm.
is a freaking national problem. And the more population you have, the more homeless you have, because the homeless got to go somewhere where there's services. Where are the services? They're in big cities: San Antonio, Portland, Eugene, Los Angeles, and so they gravitate there. But they're human beings and they're United States citizens, and it's all over the United States. And the only way to solve this problem is going to be nationally. It's more than just a matter of building houses for everybody to stay in, because
Mhm.
if you take most of the people that I responded to up until July 1st, 2021, and you put them in an apartment, all the shit that you see when you drive by their tent with all their trash, it would just be inside their apartment. You
Right.
haven't solved anything. You just put it inside an apartment,
Because
you
you're
know?
just addressing a symptom of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's addiction and mental illness. And a lot of times the mentally ill get addicted to deal with their mental illness. And so now you have two problems,
Mhm.
and I don't like it. I don't like to see it. I don't like it's urban blight. It's ugly. It's a pain in the ass. But what else are we going to do? You need a national, it needs more tax money, like you said, like for San Antonio, for Eugene. We need mental health services. We need people to be able to go out to some dude who's having a mental health crisis, walking down the street naked, talking to himself. He doesn't need cops. He needs somebody who knows how to deal with his mental health crisis and get him into the right resource. And you
Yeah.
can't solve that with National Guard. You can't solve it with police. You can't solve it with the fire department. All the fire department can do is we take them to the emergency room. The emergency room is like, what the fuck are we going to do with them?
Right.
They can keep them there. You know, they can get them something to eat, get them cleaned up, get them stabilized, and then send them back out to the street, and then it starts all over again. So yeah,
Right.
so these problems are all over, and unfortunately, it takes tax money, which is the common good, for us to spend however many cents per thousands of dollars, um, to pool this money to have this resource. So yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated issue. Um, I
I
know
love to
it's
ask, what's
go ahead.
that?
Go ahead.
I love to ask people, because some people are so worked up, like, I'm fucking tired of this, and they're just raging about it. It's like, I love to say, so what do you think we should do with them? We'll put them in jail. So we still have to spend tax money to keep them in jail, and it's against our constitution to keep them in jail. You can't keep somebody in jail because they're mentally ill and homeless. So then what are you going to do? Are you going to do like send out death squads like some third world country and, just make them disappear in the middle of the night? You're going to throw them in a dirt floor prison and just let them figure it out. I mean, that's not the answer either, but I love to ask people, like, what do you think the solution is? Cause I would love to know, and it's close to my heart because I have several people in my family suffer from addiction. And I think their addiction is a result of, being maybe bipolar, but they didn't start off life that way. And so, I think those programs are important. I'm sure San Antonio could use them just like, Eugene could use more of them. So.
Yeah. I got family with addiction. I've had family that's died from addiction. It's definitely not fun. I've had, unfortunately, a lot of experience growing up with it. And even in the neighborhood I was in, I saw a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I've kind of adopted certain ideas through my life that were not well thought out. So I'm not going to be here and say that I've never said those things, but it's definitely a complex issue. And then dealing with mental, not even as acute as some people, but like sleep deprivation, trauma, all these things kind of rolled into my personal experience of me and dealing with it and trying to use alcohol, pharmaceuticals to cope with it.
Yep.
Try to get sleep, just numb out, whatever. That didn't lead me down a path. And I could relate in a way that I could easily see if I didn't have the resources or people that, love me or even challenge me to try to become a better person or like to come to this certain point in my life where I am right now. I could have easily went down those paths too, because not that I've dabbled a whole lot, but some of these drugs, they work, you know what I mean? And that's why people do them. And I'm not saying that they work in the sense that they're going to heal them, but in the sense of they make them feel better temporarily. And then you're constantly chasing that high. And then you factor in the dopamine that is released from that because the body recognizes that it doesn't care what it is. If it makes them feel better and it gets that rush, then you're constantly going to try to, and then you have dopamine depletion. And so it's definitely a staggering downward spiral. People can go down quickly.
Yep. If you don't have intervention, if you don't have, you can end up somebody who you love. If not yourself, somebody who you love could be one of those people in a tent, we had some hardcore addiction. My first wife, not my current wife doesn't drink and has never drank. And I think that's a reaction to the fact that her brother, who's a former Marine, was an alcoholic, and he's been sober for longer than he was an alcoholic now. But we have a couple of our kids who were freaking hardcore addicts, and like as bad as you can be. And thank God one of them's an MMA fighter now, and he works construction, and he's a manager. And the other one is a business owner, and she's supporting her family with her business now. And but just think of, okay, so I'm taking care of all these people on the streets when I go to work, and you come into work one day and one of your captains says, "Hey, Shep, dude, is your daughter okay? What are you talking about? We transported her last night. She got shot." It's like, what? Yeah, we transported her from over here on such and such street. She got shot in the back. What are you talking about? And then, but you don't communicate with your daughter regularly because she's an addict. And so if she calls, we'll answer the call and talk to her, but like basically put hard boundaries. But she's one of these people. And then today, if you met her, she's beautiful. She's gregarious. She has her own business. She took care of all of her legal issues, got her custody of her kids back. And so you never know who's redeemable, So both our son and our daughter are, you're never out of recovery. You're always in recovery. It's a daily process. So they've been in recovery for years now. But there was a time when, holy shit, And the realization comes to me that I'm not better than these people. I just don't have the genetic predisposition to become an addict like they did, you know. And there is some genetics there, because you have whole lines of people in a family who either alcoholics or drug addicts or both. And then it might skip a couple people, like in my family, like in my current wife's family, like in my ex-wife's family. My ex-wife is an alcoholic, and our marriage fell apart after 28 years because of the drinking. It was fucking destroying us. It was, you know, luckily for me, my youngest daughter at the time was 18 and the oldest was 24. But it like, and I always thought, well, this will take care of itself. Like it'll calm down, you know, as we get older. But it wasn't calming down. And here I am now in my 50s. It's like, what the hell, you know? Yeah. Why am I broke? I make over $100,000 a year every year. Why am I broke? And then it was a disease, and she's still in her disease. You know, she lives in a trailer park now, you know, and she used to live in a beautiful horse ranch, and now she lives in a trailer park. Yeah. But she didn't start off like that, life that way. My son and daughter didn't start off life that way. They had all the resources and benefits that anybody in America could want at their disposal through successful parents. But the right thing happened with my daughter. She got a infected hangnail, and she had surgery on it, and they gave her oxy prescription. And Damn. That was the beginning of it, man. That was the beginning of almost 10 years of addiction. And so there was a time with my ex-wife where I tried if you can't beat them, join them. And so I would just drink with her and, you know, take her out clubbing and stuff. And that just was like gasoline on the fire, you know? So that wasn't the answer. So, through marriage counseling before the end of my marriage, my therapist is a great guy. I saw him for 7 years. He's still a friend. He would just say, Mike, man, you need to go to Al-Anon, which Al-Anon is a support group for friends and family of alcoholics. I'm like, yeah, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Okay. You know, it's just an hour meeting, you know, you go once or twice a week, you know, it's like, I don't have time for that. Finally, after 2 years of therapy and marriage counseling, I told him, okay, I'll go. And he gave me a list of meetings, and I went to an Al-Anon meeting, and I found out that a lot of my issues that were inflamed by my military service and my fire service were from trying to control something I couldn't control, which is the addiction of other people. I was hypervigilant. I was angry. I was manipulative. And all those things were brought to a head by living with an addict, by living with an alcoholic. And then, you know, fast forward, I meet my new wife, and, you know, my stepkids, who I call my kids, are hardcore in their addiction. But now I have tools to deal with it. And my current wife had tools to deal with it. And we were able to understand boundaries, and we were able to protect ourselves. Because when you're trying to stop somebody else's addiction, you're not protecting yourself. You're like, I'm going to throw myself on my own sword. You know, you're like the martyr, you know, you're the one everybody hates because you're so hypervigilant, so angry. So, you find one travesty after another, whether it be your finances got messed up because of the addict, your property got messed up because of the addict, your car insurance is through the roof because of the addict. You have to give the addict a ride to all their appointments. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. You can let them be responsible for their own decisions, and you can protect yourself. So, you know, now the number one thing is self-protection. Number two is I'll help you if you ask for help. I won't try to impose my help on you. You know, I won't try to fix you. And my kids didn't get fixed. They didn't get recovery until they were ready, and they did it on their own without any help from us, without going to expensive rehabs, and my ex-wife, unfortunately, for two of my daughters, she's still living in her addiction, and and it's ugly,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, roller coaster.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, a lot of those things you said like kind of resonated with me. Um, just through my experiences, like um and it's kind of sucks, right? Like in the sense of not just this situation itself. And I'm glad that your kids are on the other side of it, right? And continue to do the work. And
Oh
you
yeah, and I'm
also,
super proud of them. I'm super proud of them for surviving, because they know stuff about themselves that a lot of people don't.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's definitely tough to drag yourself out of that. And that's usually where it works, right? Like the person has to want it for them to get better.
yeah,
And you can have the best information, the best education, all the resources, like you said, they had in the world, but until they're willing to, walk through that fire, so to speak,
yeah,
they're never going to. And
yeah,
it's, yeah. So going back, and when you said all those things, I kind of thought about, because I dealt with my mom. She dealt she was pretty bad with addiction, and it was like back surgeries and all kinds of stuff that kind of led her
sure,
down that path, along with other stuff, losing purpose, identity, losing that, kids leaving, the empty nest, when she was,
yeah,
so it was a bunch of things, right? And then also
yeah,
childhood traumas, etc. It
yeah,
was this perfect storm, but I didn't know any better, right? That's just what it was. um, and kind of learning all the stuff that I've learned from my, accepting that I needed help, accepting the idea that I was not, all the things I was doing was not working. And then
right,
finally, like, just like, hey, kind of showing up, mental health on base. And like, I mean, this was like post an attempt, but I was just like, I didn't tell anybody about it. Well, I told my therapist, she convinced me to go in. I went
yeah,
in, I was like, hey, like, I don't know what the fuck else to do. So here I am.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then that kind of led the journey, right? But if I never decided, even though she convinced me, I was glad she was aware enough where she didn't make me go, because it
right.
probably wouldn't have worked.
It
But
wouldn't.
she talked me to going. I went, I decided, and that started my path, right?
Yeah,
To try to get better. And it's like my mom used to say all the time, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
right, right,
And with that, it's, looking back on it, I kind of wish that I would have had a little bit more compassion. Well, that's not true. I tried a lot of different things to try to connect with my mom in many different ways to try to bring her out of it. But at the end of the day, like we just highlighted, if the person's not willing to walk down the path, and I believe she did, but then, yeah, she did. But then the meds that they put her on was like, it almost numbed her to the point where she was of like a sliver of herself, if that makes
sure,
sense. So you
yeah,
engage with
totally,
her, and she was there, she would talk, but she wasn't the bright spirited person. And I
right,
was probably that same person when I was on all these pharmaceuticals, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I was just numb. My brother told me at my mom's funeral that he saw me. He was like, "That's not my brother." He told me that later, but he
yeah,
saw the way I was engaging with people, and he was like, "That's not my brother," which is
yeah,
strange to hear, but it makes sense.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, it's unfortunate for your ex-wife as well. I mean, just as a
yeah.
person in general, like it sounds like you have that awareness as well. Like you don't want that for anyone.
No, I don't
Um,
have any hard feelings to her. I don't. I still have to pay her alimony for another year, but I don't have any hard feelings. It just is what it is, and I hope she gets better, for at least, if not for her own sake, for my daughters. But I don't know if that'll happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I had to do the business, and then I had to put a log on the fire for the little dog.
there you go.
Yeah,
Nice.
she gets cold, so she likes to lay by the fire.
What's her name?
Her name's Tilly. Yeah, she's
Tilly.
11. Yeah, she can only do She's super athletic for an old dog, but she can only do like 2 miles, and then I got to take her back to the car, and then me and the other dog take off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, back to that, what you're saying. So, yeah. So there's two things, like you're not yourself. Number one, like codependency. I remember the first time the therapist told me I was codependent. I didn't have a full understanding, but I didn't like being told there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, he's right. So I've given up mountain biking. I don't do art anymore. I didn't know where my life started and my kids and my ex-wife's life started. Like I had become them and given up my identity, and I think, some of that made me angry, plus trying to control like all the issues going on with the alcoholic, and then being sleep deprived from working tons of overtime in a busy fire station. And I was a dick. I was an angry guy, and then so fast forward a couple of years, and my divorce is done. I'm settled down. I'd been in therapy for years, been going to Al-Anon for years, got back in touch with myself, started mountain biking again, started being creative again. And I had both of my sisters came from California to attend my wedding to my current wife here on our property. And after the wedding later that night, they said, it's amazing to have our brother back, because I had changed so much, I I still feel a little bit of shame about that I was a person who hurt other people's feelings, that I caused any kind of damage, by that. But at the same time, I know it's a common problem, because I guarantee you, our moms are probably quite a bit different, but I bet you they're quite a bit the same, because addiction is addiction, and it leads to mental issues, and we're all human beings. And so we all have this same disease, the people that deal with addiction, we all have the same disease, so the same symptoms. And so, and then, the commonalities of military service and, fire service, and, fire service being paramilitary. And so, I totally get it. And so I'm glad I have this understanding. Sometimes I've talked to other people that I knew were going through the same thing or similar things that I was, and be able to help direct them to help. I talked to other firefighters before that were having some struggles like I was having. They didn't even realize that our insurance covered mental health counseling, And so to tell them, yeah, you can go. Nobody's going to know about it. It's totally covered. Do it. It's well worth it. So, yeah.
And that's what it takes, right? It takes that one person, and that's what I mean is like that one person for you to just bring it to their awareness, is like, hey, our insurance covers it. Hey, oh, and by the way,
yeah,
it helps, it helped me go through whatever, right? Like it's that story, that sharing of the story that will encourage others to do the same, especially if you're like someone they look up to or a tenured person.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like oversharing, but share to what is needed.
Yep.
Because not for nothing, like especially with males, it's not one of the things. I think it's getting better. The narrative is changing, and in the sense of you could be a man, you can be all these things at once and still be the same, strong person to do what's needed to get done or what have you. As opposed to just keeping it all in and being an asshole,
right.
Like I was as well. So that's just a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. The thing of it is like there's a really good life out there, but it's all on your based on your perspective and your willingness to be open to influence, So if you're open to influence and you're open to change your perspective, I know one of the things for me is it started with, I was all, butthurt about all these little things that were going on in my life, but I was not having gratitude for all the blessings and the amazing things that were going on in my life. So it started, one of the things early on in therapy and Al-Anon and stuff is like being aware of being grateful, is like sitting down and writing 5 down every morning, 5 things I'm grateful for. And they could be the same things every morning, but every morning reminding yourself that you have 5 things to be grateful for, and then, going to meetings or going to a therapist I've taken a lot of online stoicism courses through the Daily Stoic, and they echo the same kind of format as a lot of other mental health stuff about gratitude and, about getting to know yourself by, writing stuff out, by journaling, super important. I don't journal every day anymore, but there was a time when I had a stack of like 7 journals that covered, probably 10 years. And I was more every day then. Now, if I read something that really strikes me and I have some good thoughts about it, I'll journal that down, journal my feelings down. And sometimes I go back and read that stuff and I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe I thought of that. I'm super smart. But yeah. So yeah, you just got to be open to influence and, with change of perspective, I mean, life could be pretty amazing, and if you can just realize, if you can start to brush off what you can't control, and realize that you can't control it, and it just is, life can be a lot more enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, gratitude is one of those things I've been working on recently. Because I was in the same boat, right? I had this. I mean, it's just double-edged sword, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm still settling into this new house we got, right? We've been blessed to get, and it's strange having something of your own, and then it's also strange to know that you're not going to go at least seemingly, like in the next 5 to 10 years, you're not going to go anywhere, because that's all I got used to was leaving, right? I was TDY deployments, whatever.
Oh yeah,
PCSing.
Oh yeah.
So that on its own, and then most of the times we had a house, it was somebody else's. It was either renting or on base or whatever. So there was a lot of different things to get new, like to understand. And then once we moved in, it was like, I don't feel like this is my house. And on top of that, it was just like this subconscious understanding, like, I'm going to leave again anyway, so I'm not going to get attached to the house. Does that make sense? It's like not getting attached to any one thing.
Yeah. I was in the service for 5 years and 10 months. I did a long tour overseas, and then the first 2 years I was stationed in Texas, and then I was overseas. But I just kind of remember everything was temporary, and you always decided on what you bought or what you did based on if you had to ship it or not. Or if you could keep it in your room or your apartment or whatever, So yeah, I remember that feeling of temporary, and that's one of the reasons why I got out, because you got to admit that 5 years and 10 months, that's like, you either going to stay or get out. Don't, like, if you stay in for 8 years, you might as well do 20.
Right.
So I wanted to start a life. I didn't want to live a temporary life anymore, so that's why I got out. I was burned out. I was burned out on the Air Force Fire Department, and I swore I was not going to be a firefighter when I got out. And I did construction for a while. I did masonry, and I was a laborer, and then I was a mason's tender, and then I thought, fuck this, I'm going back in the fire service, and I started applying for fire jobs, and I landed a fire job for a private fire department that mostly hired former Marines and former Air Force guys because of our experience with aircraft. And that's when my life started, my out of the military permanent life. That's when I started. That's when I got my first house and all that. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about that feeling of things aren't yours. No, like you don't have ownership,
Right.
you know? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, gratitude is one thing I've been working on. Like every day is trying to at
Yep.
least focus on, and it's interesting how that starts to shape and it was also like another part of it, right? Like part of, I mean, one of my traumas is stuff like and when you going back when they were talking about you being codependent, it's like the first time I thought about the first time like I was diagnosed, they're like, yeah, PTSD. And then now I understand more of like the fractions of just like an umbrella, right? PTSD. And then there's these different if we look at a pie chart, one of them is like moral injury, right? And that's kind of
Mhm.
where I fall under. It's just,
Yeah.
but with that, it's one of the things from that is not feeling like you deserve to get better or you're deserving of anything in life, really.
Right. Like you just are what you are. And that's,
Yeah. And anything that has negative that is happening in your life, that's what you deserve. That's
yeah.
it's fucked up, but that's kind of where
Yeah.
it is. And I still struggle with that at times when I start to feel good about something. I like that old thought pattern starts to kind of bring me down because I'm not deserving of it. So with that, it's like anything materialistic, experiences, etc. I'm better in a better place now, but I still start to go back down those paths.
Yeah.
So that's like another layer to it, if that makes sense.
Yep. That totally makes sense. And that's a recent topic, especially toward the end of my fire service, is when I first got in the fire service, just like probably I'm guessing when you first got in the military, PTSD wasn't a big topic.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as it became more common or more popular, I was constantly responding on people and medical calls and asking what their medical history was, and almost everybody had PTSD. And so in the fire service, firefighters, male and female, were constantly in denial about that. And I don't think I have PTSD. I think I suffer from what I hired a psychologist to come and talk to the recruits about dealing with uncivil behavior and self-care. And his name is Doc Leeds. You could Google him sometime. Doc Leeds. His name is Mike Leeds, Leeds. And he teaches he's a professor of psychology, and he teaches at the University of Oregon, but he specializes in PTSD and counseling veterans and dealing with veterans. So his explanation to me was there's PTSD and there's vicarious trauma. I think I suffer from vicarious trauma, which vicarious trauma is being on scene for all, like nobody's trying to kill me. Like I'm not in a combat situation. Nobody's trying to kill me. What I'm dealing with is traumatic things that happen to other people. And that kind of bleeds off onto my character, and it causes me to be hyper vigilant. So not only am I hyper vigilant at home because I live with an alcoholic, but now I'm dealing with all these other people's trauma on a daily basis. And so that kind of sticks to you, you kind of carry it with you. And over a career, it just causes you to be really short-tempered, hyper-vigilant, on and on and on and on. So he explained to me the difference. And then my therapist agreed that I didn't have PTSD. I suffered more from vicarious trauma. But PTSD in the fire service and police service is a real issue. I think it's different than a combat veteran, because I can't imagine what it would be like to have somebody trying to actually fucking kill you, or you having to kill somebody else. I mean, people have died at my hands, but they were probably going to die anyway. I wasn't trying to kill them. I was trying to save them, and they died, and that to me falls into the vicarious trauma thing that Doc Leeds talked about. But yeah, and there is something to think that this is just your lot in life and there's no way to change it. But you can change it with perspective, and that perspective starts with having gratitude, because gratitude should affect your perspective of things. If you don't
Right.
have any gratitude or self-worth, your perspective is going to be really negative. You're going to be super cynical, and there's a lot of that right now. And that's big thing that spreads like wildfire on social media. You see people so worked up about like shit they can't control,
Yeah. It's a contagion, contagion
yeah, for sure.
idea. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. But, yeah, anyhow, yeah. So I don't know where we were going with that.
It's a vicarious trauma. I haven't heard of that one before, but I mean, it might be under that umbrella. I remember the first time I heard about moral injury, that seemed to make more sense. And I still go to a class once a week, to the VA and stuff. But yeah, it's just, it's pretty wild, to think once you think you've done all the work and you're in a better place and you're like, I don't have to do any more work, there's still something to be done.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, right? Because the human mind, it's based, I don't want to say based off of habits, but it is a creature. We are creatures of habits. And then those thought processes are habits. Yep. So if you don't constantly challenge those or have people to help you challenge those, then you'll just fall back into that.
Yep.
And then you just be back where you were.
Yep. And to me, self-medicating isn't just drugs or alcohol. Self-medicating can be a mental state. It can be taking in some kind of media that helps you to feel better, but it's not good for you, So,
right.
if you don't, you can definitely fall back into that mental state and start self-medicating with, the whole idea of gratitude and perspective is in with the good, out with the bad, I mean, and getting to a place where bad things happen, but maybe they're not happening to you. They're just happening and you just have to deal with them.
And it could also be an opportunity for growth, right? I mean, it's easier said than done, but even I'm learning just through experiences and kind of shifting my perspective and trying to learn something, not just focus on the negative and trying to like see the door out of the positive part of it, right? It's an opportunity for growth. And like even in tragic situations, I'm not saying it's easy. It's definitely a tool. It's just not a tool, a skill that has to be worked on. And I'm not saying like just focus on the positive or nothing like that, but it's like also it's one, processing what happened, the negative part of it, and then starting to shift through those stages of grief, if you will. And I know they don't all like happen in a certain order. They all happen in different orders, and sometimes you don't even go through certain of the stages, but you can start to grow from it and learn something from it. And there's opportunities within it to be a better person or understand a different perspective. And this like part of that is kind of sharing that story when you're ready to help somebody else. I'm not saying go out to rooftops and, scream it out, but when the opportunity presents itself for the right audience or the right person, it definitely will. If the person's in the right state of mind to understand and receive it, then by all means.
Yeah. That's the key. I just recently had a younger mountain bike dude, who I see locally on rides and stuff. And then I'm always engaging with him on social media. He messaged me about, he's really going through a hard time. And so him and I got to talk and everything, but every suggestion that I made to him, and he's the one who asked for suggestions and help, won't work. He couldn't do it. I'm like, all right, well, good luck. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah.
I trust me, I've been through this. So I know, but if this won't work for you, if you don't want to read anything or you don't want to do anything, then I don't know what to say. If nothing changes, I love the saying from Al-Anon, and if nothing changes, nothing changes,
Yeah.
And that's totally key, so, yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've learned is, I definitely learned that early on when I kind of, I don't know, there was when I got off farm, like when I decided to get off these pharmaceuticals and try to find like another way. One of those ways was mountain biking,
Yeah.
along with other like, healthy coping mechanisms, such as
Yeah.
like I play the ukulele, I draw sometimes. There's like all these things I have around the house that because I don't like the idea, because I almost did it with mountain biking, it was becoming one dimensional, right? Just
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
one thing is going to bring me this joy. But what if
Yeah.
you can't do that one thing? Then you're fucked pretty much, because you
Yeah.
just put
Yeah.
all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Right.
But with that, man, I forgot where I was going with that. That's part of it. I'm getting old. Can't remember shit. Oh yeah, helping people. Like I try to like focus on other people. That was a way of like I guess avoiding. I was trying to help others, right?
Right.
And
Right.
with that, but that was an opportunity, right? I learned something from that not everybody is in a position. They say they want the help, but they're not really ready to be helped.
Right.
So you can give them all the information, but they're not going to accept it in that way. So now I'll help you if you're willing to help yourself. But if you're not, then I kind of usually say that up front and kind of put that boundary there, because I'm like, I'm willing to help you, but if you're not willing to help yourself, then I'm just wasting my time. It sounds fucked up, but
yeah, that's true. I mean, it's super true. Like, I mean, I like this guy and we'll continue to be friends and everything, but
yeah, definitely.
You're complaining and you want to change, but you don't want to, you don't want to change.
Right.
So you just want, I don't know. You just want to complain. I don't know. It's just like, yeah. So
and for those people, I kind of just leave the door open. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I love my sister. One of my things, my sister, who I think she's 2 years younger than me, but she's pretty wise. She said, just always have the welcome mat out and keep your mouth shut, And I love that, because the welcome mat's out and I'm not going to offer help or advice unless you ask for it, So
yeah. And through that, it's like, I've learned that as well. And I stopped doing that, right? I'm not as advertising it anymore, really. But at the same time, I'm working on myself. And then through that, the way I carry myself and the things I do going forward will, I think, I don't say advertising, not the right word, will be enough that when somebody's ready, they'll come and ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like doing those right things, exhibiting what you preach or what you speak of, and being consistent with it. And within time, it's like in Buddhism when they talk about when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah. Yeah. There's like a Bible verse. I used to be a practicing Christian, and there's a Bible verse that says, always have an answer for the hope that you have. And I think that's like, the hope that so if the hope that you have is that people could be mentally healthy, then if somebody comes to you, be able to have an answer. And if you're not living a life that looks healthy or that looks like you're mentally put together, then why would anybody want to come and talk to you? So number one, live your life in a way that people say, hey, how did you do this? Or how did you come here? Or how did you get here? And then have a way, know what you're talking about and have a way that you can help them if they come to you, and I think advertisement, I think just living right and having good perspective is a good self-promotion for what you aspire to about mental health, and physical health. I think, I have people that are my peers that you would think their life is over because they're over the age of 50. I'm 6 years old, I'm too old for this, I'm too old for that. No, you're not. Oh, you're lucky you can do this. No, I'm not lucky. I just do it. I started.
I saw a quote yesterday that ties into that. It was somebody from Softfleet, I think. And it was like one of their it said something like most people die at the age of 40, but live to 80 or something like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No,
I
that's
was
cool.
like, damn, that's fucking perfect.
Dude, towards the end of my career, a good percentage of the patients I was on were people that were younger than me, and looking at all the meds that they were taking and looking at them going, why are you, dude, you're killing yourself here. You're like slow, living a slow death by choice.
Mm,
What are you doing? I was just thinking these things, of course, not saying them, but
right.
people in their mid 40s, 50s, like with all these heart, blood pressure meds, anxiety meds, like all this stuff. And it's just like, what are you doing, man? Get outside. You live in Oregon. You know how beautiful it is here? Like, how many trails there are right by your house? Just, and if you don't have to ride a mountain bike like me, but go outside and go for a walk. That's the simplest thing you can do, you
Yeah, and
know?
that's one of the things that I unexpectedly learned through mountain biking was um like I would take Lotus out when I got Lotus, I would take her out on walks on the trails and like just something as simple as that. The answer is so simple. And I think oftentimes people think that because the answer is so simple, then it can't work, that it
Yeah.
shouldn't work.
Yeah.
And it's just that and Andrew Huberman, I don't know if you follow him or see anything he
Yeah.
posts, but
It's funny because I do follow him and I listen to his podcasts. And
nice.
the guy who helped me train my dog just went to a conference and posted his picture of him and Huberman standing side by
Oh,
side.
cool.
Yeah.
So he
So
talks
yeah.
about forward momentum and like
Yep.
light and yeah, so that's where I was going with it. But
Yeah.
it's just doing these simple things, um, like just taking a walk on the trails.
Yeah.
And just started to do these it started to kind of like open the shades, so to speak, on whatever, you know, darkness that I had in like this filter that I had that I couldn't see through.
Yeah.
And it was just like one step at a time, it's kind of like the old age saying, and there's a lot of cliches that we're saying, but at the same time, it's, it,
They're,
it works. I
yeah.
don't,
They're cliches for a reason.
right. I was going to say that, but yeah,
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. One step at a time, one day at a time. In Al Anon, they tell you one day at a time. And if you can't do one day at a time, do an hour at a time. And if you can't do that, then do a few minutes at a time,
Mhm.
which is so true. If you can just get to the next step, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And that's kind of, and in special forces too, that not that to say I was, but that's how they talk about getting through like, SEAL training or what have you, or whatever training. It's like
yeah.
the people that fail out are the people that think too far ahead of the training. But if you just kind of focus on this next step, make it
Yeah.
to lunch, make it to, I don't know, this exercise, and then make it
Yep.
to that, and just constantly do it. And before you know it, you're there.
Yep.
Same thing, like when I was in my darkest probably time, like it was hard for me to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And then I somehow, some way, whether it was somebody telling me or whatever, somehow I started just, think about getting up,
Yep.
and then sit up and then get your feet off the bed.
Right.
And I hate it. I say this out loud with a certain sense of like shame and like kind of anger because I allowed myself to get to that point to a
Right.
certain extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but it's true. My point is, and the reason I share these things is not to get any type of whatever, because that's not
Yeah.
something to brag about, but it's to hopefully resonate with somebody that's listening that
Yeah.
needs to hear it or have
Yeah.
this basic understanding to move forward or whatever it is that they're going through.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, take it one step at a time, move
Yeah.
forward and
Well,
try to,
nowadays information and help is so accessible, either through Zoom or FaceTime or just, I mean, it's out there. And if you want to feel better and if you want to live a more purposeful life, I mean, you can change. It just takes you to be open to influence and to want to do it. And life's not perfect for me. I'm semi-retired. I'm still settling into it. It's just been over a year. I still have my side business, and, I still have things that stress me out or worry me or whatever, but I have a whole toolbox of things that I can fall back on, and I have people for support, and people like you are out there, people like me are out there. There's people that are more better suited and better equipped than we are.
Yeah.
And it's available, help's totally available.
Yeah, definitely. Like the things I say, it's learning from other people smarter than me. So I mentioned some of them earlier. My wife. I mean, it's those people that are willing to. I don't know everything, and we don't know everything, but there are a lot of people who know a lot of stuff. And if you're willing to listen and hear and then process these ideas and form your own ideas, then you can start to grow in a different way than just physically.
Yeah. Like going to a group meeting is kind of a big thing and a big reach for a lot of people. Yeah. But I know when I first started going to Al-Anon meetings, like just sitting in that room with all these people, there's so much trauma and wisdom and recovery in those rooms. And like, you can't help but be kind of inspired about it. And you notice a common thread. And the same thing with people with PTSD, with depression, there's a common thread through all of us. And there's a reason for it. And there's a way to help fix it, not to say fix it, but to help. There's a better way that somebody else has tried. You don't have to feel by yourself. So many people have been on the same journey, so yeah. And I got some guys coming at 9:00 with just a few minutes here. And they're going to give me an estimate for some tile and a shower in my shop.
Well, that sounds like a good way to end it, man. I really appreciate your time, you sharing what you shared. Yeah, man, I appreciate your service as well, especially at 35 years in the fire department. But yeah, I mean,
36, man.
36. I'm sorry, 36.
Christ.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm just kidding.
Nah, I got you. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we can. I mean, I'm sure we're gonna stay in contact.
Yeah, and, absolutely. Yeah, and I told you my brother-in-law lives in Dallas, and I want to get there. And if I do, I'd love to go hook up with you and go mountain biking. And I hope you come back to Oregon. I'd love to show you the trails over here in the Eugene area.
Yes, sir. We'll definitely get that done. Either you come down there or go up there. Maybe we'll do both. But yeah, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you, and yeah, thanks for coming on. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, make sure you call me when they draw my name for that pivot.
Definitely, will do.
All right, man.
Have a good one. All right, out.